അപ്പോൾ ഇന്ന് നമ്മൾ നോക്കാൻ പോകുന്നത് മെൻഡിങ് വാൾസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ചാപ്റ്ററിൻ്റെ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആൻസേഴ്സും ആക്ടിവിറ്റീസും ആണ്. അപ്പോൾ അതിന് മുമ്പ് ഈ ചാനൽ ആരെങ്കിലും സബ്സ്ക്രൈബ് ചെയ്യാനുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ദയവ് സബ്സ്ക്രൈബ് ചെയ്ത് സപ്പോർട്ട് ചെയ്യുക. നമുക്ക് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ നമ്പർ 1 നോക്കാം. വൈ ഡസ് ദ പോയറ്റ് സേ ദാറ്റ് there is something that doesn't love a wall? The poet says that there is something that doesn't love the wall because nobody sees or hears anybody breaking the wall, but every spring season the poet finds the wall is broken, so it's obvious that there is something that does not love the wall and wants to see it broken. It is this something that makes the ground under the wall swell, causing the stones of the wall to fall down on either side. Question 2. Why does the poet meet his neighbor beyond the hill at spring? The poet meets his neighbor beyond the hill at spring so that they can fix one day and walk along the wall to mend it by picking up the fallen stones and fixing them back. Question 3. How does the poet and his neighbor mend the gaps in the wall? The poet and his neighbor mend the gaps in the wall by walking along the wall on either side and picking up the fallen stones and placing them back on the wall in an effort to mend it. Question 4. Why does the poet argue that there is no need of wall in between his estate and that of his neighbor? The poet argues that there is no need of wall in between his estate and that of his neighbor because his area is covered with pine and the poet's area is full of apple trees. The poet's apple trees will never go to his area to eat that cones of his pines. Question 5. How does the neighbor justify the need of weights or fences? Need of walls or fences. The neighbor justifies the need of 4 walls or fences by saying that good fences make good neighbors. Question 6. Why does the poet consider the spring season mischievous? The poet considers the spring season mischievous because it is in that season gaps are found in the walls. He thinks that spring season makes the frozen ground under the walls expand. Because of this expansion, the walls get cracks, making the upper stones of the wall fall down on to the side. Question 7. What are the contrasting views presented in the poem? The poet has one view, but his neighbor has a different view. The poet thinks there is no need for a fence or a wall between neighbors, especially when the author's area has apple trees and neighbor's area has pine trees. There is no way that the apple trees will trespass into the neighbor's estate and eat the cones of the pines, but the neighbor thinks that good fences make good neighbors. The activity 1 or paragraph writing ആണ്. Question number 1. Elaborate the idea in the following line in a paragraph. Good fences make good neighbors. Good fences make good neighbors means it is good to have some limits between neighbors so that their relation will remain healthy at all times. If there is unlimited freedom between neighbors, trouble will sound out. Suppose you grow goats in your house, your neighbor has a vegetable garden. If there is no fence, your goat will go and eat up the vegetable of your neighbor. Will he like it? Suppose your neighbor's children come and open your fridge and eat all the food you have kept there. Will you like it? So there must be some boundaries between neighbors and only then there will be good relations. Activity 2. Appreciation ആണ്. Question 2. Discuss the following. Answer the central theme of the idea. The central theme of the poem is that nature does not like separation and that is why it tends to destroy the walls. But for healthy relation, walls or fences are necessary. If there are no boundaries between neighbors, their relation will not last long. Good fences make good neighbors. Symbolic significance of the wall in the poem. The wall symbolizes the restriction between neighbors. Even if you love your neighbor dearly, you can't give him unlimited freedom in your house. Wall symbolizes such boundaries. Poetic device employed by the poet. The poet has employed many devices to make his poem effective. The poem has a fine rhythm. He has used fine metaphor in calling the boulders as loaves and bowls. He has used lot of humor. The hunters finding rabbit of their dogs, his command to the stones to stay in place till his back is turned, and calling his neighbor as a stone-aged man with stone as weapons in his hand. His logic of his apple tree is not going to eat the pine cones in his neighbor's estate is very funny. He has used a simile when he says that there are 2 neighbors keeping the stones back was like an outdoor game. There is personification when he tells the boulder, stay where you are. Here he thinks the boulders to be some kind of mischievous children who ran away from the moment with their parents' eyes are off. There's parallelism in the use of good fences by good neighbors. There is excellent imagery in the poem. We see how spring season causes the ground to swell and lose the boulders. We can see the hunters trespassing with their barking dogs. They are trying to shoot rabbits. We can see the apple trees and the pine trees. We can see the neighbors walking on either side of the wall, fixing the fallen stones, and the stones falling down as soon as they are turned their backs. To the language, Robert Frost has used very simple but vivid language to write his poem. There are not many words which are unknown to us. The sentences are simple and there is no complexities in the construction. Anybody who knows some English can get the meaning clearly. Essentially, Frost is a romantic poet who loved simplicity in language. Although it's a fine poem, it is very close to the structure of prose, and so understanding it is very easy. Only a great poet can do such a thing. Make a fine poem using simple words. At the structure, the poem has a simple structure. The poem proceeds with the ease of a story told by a master. There are no twists and turns, and everything is clear without any mystification or complication. True structure is always easy, pleasing to the eye and pleasing to the mind. At the question 3, now prepare a note of appreciation of the poem Mending Walls. Frost once said, a poem begins in delight and ends in wisdom. The poem Mending Walls proves his theory. He starts his poem in a delightful way, saying that there is something that does not like a wall. He does not say that what that something is. That something makes the ground under the wall swell, which results in cracks in the wall. Gradually, the stones that make the fall to either side. The fallen stone have lost their shapes. Some look like loaves of bread and other look like balls. It will need some spell or magic to keep the stones balanced on the wall even for a short time. The poet has to command the stones to stay in place at least till he and his neighbor have turned their backs on them. He knows very well that they won't stay there for long. The gaps in the walls are so big that even two people can pass through them walking side by side. It's funny that nobody ever sees and hears anybody breaking the wall, but every springtime the walls are broken and the people have to repair them. Frost feels there is no need for a wall between him and his neighbor. His neighbor grows pine and he grows apple trees. Will apple trees go and eat the cones of the pine? Why should there be a wall? A wall was fine if they had cows. Cows would get mixed up. Frost tells his neighbor there is no need for a wall, but the neighbor insists that good fences make good neighbors. Frost has used many poetic devices to make his poem a fine one. He has used metaphor, simile, personification. അപ്പോൾ ഇതാണ് നമ്മുടെ ചാപ്റ്റർ. താങ്ക് യു.